We are talking about all the 5-star books that I have ever read and logged on Storygraph. Not all of them of all time, I don't have a record of that, but I've taken all the books that I've rated 5 stars on Storygraph and I have put them in a bracket, and we're going to put them head to head and see what books come out on top and what I can safely say would be my favourite book of all time at this moment in time. Because I hate it when people ask me, what's your favourite book of all time? Because it varies from day to day. So this is going to be my current 5-star favourites and why I would pick one over the other. I have to put it into 2 brackets is the word. I had to put it into 2 brackets because there were just too many books on my 5-star list, which I guess is a good thing. So we'll start with number 1. So our first one is House of Salt and Sorrows versus Dance of Thieves. I'm not going to go through what all of these books were. Like, I'm not going to go through the plots or anything because this video would be so long if I did that. But I'll give you a vague overview. So House of Salt and Sorrows is a horror haunted house set by the ocean. Dance of Thieves is the first in a YA trilogy. Duology, my bad. Duology. I can't remember what Dance of Thieves was about, whereas I have very specific images in my head of what House of Salt and Sorrows was about, so that one's going to have to be the winner for that. Okay. Oh, okay, Sorcery of Thorns. Great magical libraries, books that come to life, YA. Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics is historical sapphic romance based around astrology. But I have reread Sorcery of Thorns really recently and I loved it, so it's going to have to be that one. Like, Lady's Guide is pretty good, but I can't actually remember what happened. I know I enjoyed it, but Sorcery of Thorns is hitting different at the moment. Okay, Ember in the Ashes or Opium and Absinthe. So Ember in the Ashes is, I think, a Middle Eastern YA adventure, but I could not tell you what happens in that book. I've completely forgotten. Must have been good if I rated it 5 stars, but fucked if I know what it's about. Opium and Absinthe, I have slightly more of an idea what it's about. I think it's a murder mystery set in Victorian New York, slightly after Victorian New York. Given that I remember more about it than Ember in the Ashes, it's going to have to be Opium and Absinthe. Okay, Divergent or The Hero of Ages. Divergent is Divergent. I don't feel like I need to explain what that is. Hero of Ages is... Oh, I'm just going to double check. I'm pretty sure that's the Dragon Age book that I love. Oh. It's not, it's a Brandon Sanderson. I think I'm picking Divergent over Brandy Sandy. I don't remember what happened in A Hero of Ages, and Divergent moved me in a way that very few books have. I don't think it'd have the same effect now, but back then it really did. Six of Crows or A Lesson in Thorns. Six of Crows, I shouldn't have to explain, but it's a YA heist. Fantasy heist book with elemental magic, and Lesson in Thorns is a polyamorous erotica. So very different. Oh, they're so different. How do I compare them? Because, like, I remember about the same for both of them. Oh, that's tricky. If I was going to do it on rereadability, I would probably say Lesson in Thorns is going to be more enjoyable, but I'm more likely to pick up Six of Crows again, I think. Yeah. Okay, House of Earth and Blood or Demons of the Ocean. House of Earth and Blood is the first Crescent City book by Sarah J Maas. Demons of the Ocean is the first Vampirates book, which is, oh, that was one of my favourite series when I was younger. Yeah, fuck it. Vampirates over Sarah J Maas, definitely. Okay, Queen of Nothing. Queen of Nothing is the second in the Cruel Prince trilogy. I don't remember what happened in the second book. I know what happened in the first book, and I think I have some idea about what happened in the third. I can't remember what happened in the second. And then City of Bones is the first in the Mortal Instruments series. It's going to have to be City of Bones. That book means a lot, nostalgia-wise. Oh god, okay. Poppy War is Asian-inspired war. Is it epic fantasy? Such a good book. I really, really love the first one. Hated the second and didn't read the third. Ink for the Beloved is about tattoos and the power that some tattoos hold. You know what? I don't even know if it's fantasy. I don't remember. I think it's going to have to be Poppy War because I don't remember Ink for the Beloved well enough. Name of the Wind or Holes. Name of the Wind. If anyone asked me what my favourite book was between like when it came out and 2018 or something like that, I would have said Name of the Wind. Holes. It was 5 stars, but it doesn't mean as much to me as Name of the Wind did. The world building in Name of the Wind just like sweeps you away and it's the best feeling. God's Grave is the third in the Nevernight trilogy. And then Empire of Storms is, I also want to say the third in the Throne of Glass series. Looking back, I didn't enjoy Nevernight as much as I thought I did. So I think it's gonna have to be Empire of Storms. Because the Throne of Glass series, like say what you will about Sarah J Maas, but reading that series, it dragged me out of a book slump, like a years long book slump. So it's gonna have to be that one. Going back to the top. Oh, okay. Dragon Age, Tevinter Nights and House of Salt and Sorrows. Dragon Age is one of the Dragon Age novels. No, it's not. It's a short story. It's the set of short stories set in the Dragon Age universe. And then House of Salt and Sorrows again. I think because this one's an anthology, I'm going to have to pick House of Salt and Sorrow because anthologies are tricky for me. I don't like that. I can't just hop from one story to the next. I have to like take a break in between stories or my brain gets confused. So it's going to be House of Salt and Sorrow. Sorcery of Thorns or Opium and Absinthe. Definitely Sorcery. It's got to be Sorcery of Thorns over Opium and Absinthe. I kind of want to reread Opium and Absinthe now. Maybe I'll do that. So you got Divergent. We've also got Pestilence, which is the first in the Four Horsemen series by Lauren Thalassa, I think. So it's dystopian end of days romance where the protagonists fall in love with each one of the Four Horsemen, and this one is Pestilence. I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed Divergent, 100%. Six of Crows and the Diviners. I enjoyed the Diviners more than I did Six of Crows. Like, Six of Crows is good, don't get me wrong, but the Diviners is like 1920s murder mystery. I think it had a heavier impact on me than Six of Crows did. Where are we? Lords and Ladies is Mr. Pratchett, specifically the Witches and the Fae. So it's not surprising this one was 5 stars. And then Demons of the Ocean is Vampirates again. I am going to have to put Mr. Pratchett over my Vampirates just because of rereadability. I could go back and read Lords and Ladies again and love it just as much. I have tried rereading Vampirates and it just doesn't hit the same way because I am older and that's fine. City of Bones, City of Brass. This is when all those naming conventions are going to come in, isn't it? City of Bones, City of Brass. It's going to have to be City of Bones because it had a heavier impact on me. Poppy War versus Name of the Wind. Jesus, that's 2 heavy hitters. It's going to have to be Name of the Wind though. Yeah. Yeah, like I would reread Name of the Wind every year if I could. Oh, I had the spoons. But I don't think I feel the need to reread Poppy War just because I know I don't like the rest of the series. Empire of Storms versus Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Now, Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter is a kind of it's not really a retelling, but it pulls on all the women in Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes, Jekyll and Hyde, or it invents more female characters in those stories and then tells their story. And in fact, that is one of the few series that I have rated every single book 5 stars. Whereas Empire of Storms, I couldn't even tell you which book it is in the series. So I think I'm going to have to go Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. It's such a good book. Okay, okay. Oh, House of Salt and Sorrows versus Sorcery of Thorns. This is tricky. In my head, they're like equally weighted 5 stars. But if I was going to go on what I really love now, it would probably have to be Sorcery of Thorns. Yeah, I think because I've read it more recently, and those are the kind of vibes that I usually go for. House of Salt and Sorrow is part of the 5 stars that it surprised me. I wasn't expecting it to be a 5 star because like ocean-based horror stories never really was my thing, but it surprised me. Sorcery of Thorns, I think, is just a reliable 5 star. It's a very good book. Pestilence and the Diviners. I mean, I don't actually remember the plot of Pestilence other than Pestilence as a character being a bit of a dick. So it's going to have to be the Diviners because I remember that story, I remember the characters and the way that all the murders unfolded. Lords and Ladies or City of Bones. Pratchett or Cassandra Clare. That's hard. That's tricky. I might have to go Lords and Ladies purely for the rereadability factor. Because City of Bones, it meant a lot to me when I was a child, but it is also very YA, and I've read it so many times. Whereas Lords and Ladies, I read it once and really enjoyed it, and I reckon I could go back and enjoy it just as much again at this moment in time. Oh God. Name of the Wind, Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. I think it might have to be Name of the Wind. Do I mean that? Do I mean that? This is really difficult to choose. So Name of the Wind, let's talk pros here. Let's talk pros. So Name of the Wind, you've got incredible world building, fleshed out characters, a sort of casual, long-winded plot that drags you from point to point. Those aren't very positive words I'm using. Whereas Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter is a bunch of women from fiction banding together to solve mysteries. I am more likely, I think, to pick up Strange Case than I am Name of the Wind. Yeah, okay. Sorcery of Thorns and the Diviners. I mean, that has to be Sorcery of Thorns. Yeah. Lords and Ladies, Strange Case. That's Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Okay, so for this round, is it Sorcery of Thorns or Strange Case? I don't know. I think Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter is leaping out of me more than Sorcery of Thorns is, and I don't know why. I don't have a reason for it, but I'm just gonna go with that. Okay, so that's the first half. Now we got to go do the second half. Oh, I keep forgetting I've got to start the tournament. Right. Okay. So, so for this one, we got The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is cozy sci-fi. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. And A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which is irreverent YA fantasy. I was initially going to pick The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, But now remembering all the good things that I liked about Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. You've got sentient sourdough starters and like giant gingerbread man that this girl can make dance. I think because I would be happier rereading A Wizard's Guide, that one's gonna have to win. Yeah. Okay. I'm Glad My Mum Died versus Miss Phryne Fisher Investigates. So I don't feel like I have to explain which book I'm Glad My Mum Died is about. It's the Jeanette McCurdy memoir. And Miss Phryne Fisher Investigates is the first book in the Phryne Fisher murder mystery series. And I'm not gonna lie, most of the reason that got a 5 star is because I watched the TV show first. So I already knew the characters in my head and it was easier. I think I'm Glad My Mum Died is gonna win that one. Okay, well, The Bad Beginning, which is the first book in a series of unfortunate events. And then we have Nettle and Bone, which is the first T. Kingfisher I ever read. And like, I like series of unfortunate events. I don't love it as much as Nettle and Bone. I shrieked when I finished Nettle and Bone. I was like ranting at anyone who would listen about how good it was, so... House in the Cerulean Sea versus Nine Goblins. Nine Goblins, 100%. House in the Cerulean Sea is about found family and gathering together a bunch of misfits from orphanages. No, that's not what that's about. It's those sort of vibes. And Nine Goblins is a short story by T. Kingfisher about 9 goblins who get accidentally transported from one side of a war to another and run into an elf who is a self-proclaimed vet for all the magical animals that live near his house. There's 100% going to be 9 goblins. Oh, God, we're swimming in T. Kingfishers, aren't we? Dark and Hollow Star is by Ashley Shuttleworth. It's an urban fantasy with fey courts and furies and magical powers and titans and gods and things. And then Bryony and Roses is T. Kingfisher's retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And I think it's gonna have to be Bryony and Roses. Yeah, I think it is. Again, love them both, but Bryony and Roses just sort of hit different. Guilty Pleasures is the first book in the Anita Blake Vampire Hunters series, and Ink and Sigil is the first in the Ink and Sigil series. I don't think it has a name. Not gonna lie, they're not that different plot-wise. They're both like hunting down weird creatures, but one's in Glasgow and one's in some other town in America. As much as I loved Guilty Pleasures, it was a product of its time. It was written in the 90s, and Ink and Sigil has that irreverent factor of like that I love in fantasy, so it's gonna have to be Ink and Sigil. Seventh Bride and A Deadly Education. Seventh Bride is another T. Kingfisher short story about a woman who is married to this person and his other wives are still there in his house. Can't actually remember the story of that one quite so well. Deadly Education is Naomi Novik's book about living in a carnivorous boarding school. That's a succinct way of putting it. It's going to be that one. Society for Soulless Girls versus the Vampire Knitting Club. Neither of these two jump out at me like some of the other names have. But I think for nostalgia's sake, it'll be the Vampire Knitting Club, just because it's set in Oxford and I used to live near Oxford for a little bit. Okay, House of Hollow versus Graceling. The thing with House of Hollow is that I remember it being on everyone's TBRs. I remember picking it up. I remember reading it. Do I remember what it was about? Not even a little bit. But apparently it was 5 stars, so it's gonna be Graceling. Once and Future Witches versus... Oh, fuck. Okay, these are very recent 5 stars. Once and Future... I read both of those this year. They both took me by surprise. And... like, they are both, like, whoppers of 5 stars. Like, 6 stars if I could push it. Once and Future Witches is... combine witch trials with the suffragette movement and 3 incredibly different sisters in a town called New Salem. Shenanigans ensue. There's lots of like of female rage and feminine vindication and things like that, whereas Spinning Silver is an incredibly crafted fairy tale following 3 women as well. I think because Once and Future Witches actually made me cry, that one's gonna win. Okay, then we have Fable, which is a YA book, piratey sort of book, that I absolutely loved, versus A Wizard's Guide. Fable made me feel all warm inside. Like, A Wizard's Guide is good and it's funny, but Fable gave me the fuzzies. The warm and fuzzy feelings. Oh, Jesus. Glad My Mum Died versus Nettle and Bone. It's gonna be Nettle and Bone. I think, as a rule, I will always pick fiction above non-fiction, if I have a choice. Okay. Zodiac Academy, The Awakening. First one in the Zodiac Academy books. If I could rescind a 5-star rating, it would be to that book. So 9 Goblins is 100% winning. Brownie and Roses versus Legends and Lattes. Oof. I think because Legends and Lattes gave more, Brownie and Roses is a short story and it's a retelling, so it's a story I knew before, whereas Legends and Lattes was a story I'd never heard before and loved, along with the rest of the internet. Okay, This Poison Heart is a YA fantasy about a young girl who inherits this old house with a greenhouse full of poisonous plants in it, and she has flowery planty. She has plant powers. She can make plants do things. Ink and Sigil was better. They're both 5 stars, but straight up. Oh God. Deadly Education we've talked about. Foundryside. Foundryside is the first in the, I don't know what the series is called, in its own series. It's a trilogy with a really cool magic system, which is a bit like coding, and I loved it. I thought it was really different. It's like full of heists. And as much as I enjoyed A Deadly Education, some of the characters were a bit naff. And the plot was a bit thin in places, so I think I'm going to go Foundryside. Vampire Knitting Club versus Graceling. Well, one is a cosy murder mystery, and one is a triumphant YA fantasy adventure that serves a great big fuck you to the antagonist, who is genuinely very scary, so it's going to be Graceling. Once and Future Witches or Diary of a Witchcraft Shop. Diary of a Witchcraft Shop is a non-fiction diary of a witch that owns a witchcraft shop in Glastonbury. And although it is good and it is funny, Once and Future Witches made me cry. Fable versus Nettle and Bone. We're going to go Nettle and Bone. Easy. 9 Goblins. Oh, they're such similar vibes. That is recommendation. If you like Legends and Lattes, you will love 9 Goblins. And it's much shorter. 9 Goblins. Definitely. It's a really good short story. Or is it a novella? I don't know. Ink and Sigil versus Foundryside. I think at the moment I would rather reread Foundryside than I would Ink and Sigil, because I've just read a lot of urban fantasy and I wouldn't want to read another one straight away. That is the only reason. That is the only way I can choose between them. Graceling versus the Once and Future Witches. That one hit hard. Nettle and Bone. Oh, that's mean. They're both teak Kingfisher. Do I like Nettle and Bone or 9 Goblins more? I like 9 Goblins more. The more goblins there are, the better. Foundryside versus Once and Future Witches. Those are really different books. Oh God. I think, as much as I loved Once and Future Witches, the text was quite dense at times, whereas Foundryside, you could just sort of slip into it and it would carry you along. So Foundryside wins that one. Oh, that's just mean. Foundryside versus 9 Goblins. I don't like this. It's also like a novella versus a Not even true. It's also a short story / novella versus like a full-length book as well, which doesn't feel fair. I think it's going to be 9 Goblins, just for the enjoyment factor, which means 9 Goblins versus The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. What? Oh my god, I mean, no, I think 9 Goblins wins. 9 Goblins wins! It is officially my favourite book. 5-star read. I really should have seen the book about goblins coming first. I really should have foreseen that. Well, now you know. I would recommend all of these books, apart from Zodiac Academy. I'm going to go take that off my 5-star list right now. Yes, that was it. That was the video. I hope it was entertaining.